Let's revisit the double slit diffraction. When we're sending light through a double slit, we are seeing two different things. We're seeing the interference pattern that we talked about in the previous chapter, but we're also seeing two diffraction patterns, okay? Actually, a single diffraction pattern from each of the slits. Now, when we do this, we have two different distances to worry about. We have the distance between the two slits. Actually, we have the distance to the screen, but we'll put that aside for now. The distance between the two slits, and we also have the width of each slit. So we're going to get two different patterns superimposed on one another. Here we can see our pattern, okay? We see the dark and bright fringes close to one another, which are due to the double slit interference. If I place these slits closer to one another, those bright and dark fringes will spread apart. If I move the slits apart from one another, I make D bigger, then these interference fringes get smaller and smaller. So this distance D, that is going to determine how wide these bright and dark fringes are that we see in the center right here. Likewise, the width of the slit will determine how big this larger pattern is. See how we have this central pattern right here, where the bright fringes are very bright, and then the bright fringes get dim, then they get bright, then they get dim. That's our diffraction pattern. And that size is determined by the width of the slits. So without changing D, if I made the width of the slits bigger or smaller, that would move these larger dark fringes further or closer apart. So one way of thinking about this is we have two different things going on. We have the interference pattern, which is represented by green right here, superimposed with the diffraction pattern, which is shown in blue. And this is very important here because remember the diffraction pattern, the sinc function right here, has a very, very intense central peak. It's actually a sinc squared function. And then the first fringe is here, then the second fringe is here. So if I take these two functions and I superimpose them on one another, you get this red pattern that you see below right here. Now, here are three different wavelengths which are shown going through the same double slit pattern. You have the larger diffraction pattern for the screen. Here's your central maximum. Here's your first diffraction dark fringe, your second diffraction dark fringe, and so on and so forth. But between them, or inside the central peak right here, you also have bright and dark fringes due to interference. And clearly, as we change the wavelength, we go from a smaller wavelength to a bigger wavelength, the diffraction pattern spreads apart, but also the interference pattern spreads apart. And finally, the longest wavelength, the red light, has the largest diffraction pattern.